everyone. My name is Leah Vachani. I'm so glad you're here. I have yet another amazing expert to introduce to you today. So let's just jump right in. This is Andrea Robertson. Dr. Andrea is based in Melbourne, Australia. You're going to love her accent, by the way. She helps women over 35 end the cycle of dieting using a simple science-backed approach to losing weight and keeping it off so they can fit back into their clothes, feel great, and thrive with energy and body confidence. Her focus is on helping women reduce inflammation by finding which foods they love that also love them back. Once inflammation is under control, all other elements of health and weight loss fall into place. In the past, Dr. Andrea owned a large allied health clinic, Southside Clinic in Adelaide, as well as 2 bar fitness studios. Andrea sold these and now works from home with clients all over the world. So, Andrea, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, Leah. Thanks for having me. It's very exciting to be able to share my passions about reducing inflammation with people all over the world through you and your connections as well and institutes.
Absolutely. And of the thousands of women watching this, I know a majority of us really are concerned about the weight gain, that somehow you cross 40, or maybe it's 35, 40, 45, and all of a sudden everything is different. And things just seem to change. Things seem out of our control. And, we want answers. So let's dive into, I know today's topic is going to be how reducing inflammation will help you hit your weight and health loss goals for good. So let's start at the beginning. What is inflammation and why is it relevant to women over 40?
Yeah, absolutely. Can I jump into something else before then on what you just said? Because when I started working with women in this space, there was very easy to do because I didn't want to talk about weight loss. Like I was like, no, the whole deal is not weight loss. The whole deal is really about getting healthy. And I saw these polls on my social media and everyone was like, I want to lose weight. I want to lose weight. Anyway, weight loss is a beautiful side effect of reducing inflammation. And so I was like, well, we can have that, but the whole goal is to get healthy. And by reducing inflammation, we really have our best health, and weight loss just happens as a side effect. So that was kind of where my whole journey started into the online space around weight loss, because I really want to help people get healthy, but we can have weight loss as a solely side effect of that. So when we talk about inflammation, there are 2 types of inflammation, and some of the listeners may have heard about one type or another, but I just want to kind of do a little bit of tiny science lesson 101 on inflammation, because we have something called acute inflammation. And that's like if you roll your ankle, go for a run, roll your ankle, it swells up, it gets red, it has fluid in it. And that's acute inflammation. And that's really an important thing to happen. It's an important process that happens in our body that helps with tissue healing. And just for those who are listening to, I should let you know that I'm an osteopath. That's one of my backgrounds. And hence I know a lot about tissue inflammation and injury. And I'm also a naturopath and nutritionist. So I have this kind of triple interest in inflammation, both acute and chronic. But this acute version of inflammation is really important. Definitely happens. It usually settles within a couple of days. It's important to help tissue healing. And it's that really immediate response that happens if you roll your ankle or any other injury that you have and have inflammation, the acute type. And then we get onto the chronic inflammation. That's what I'm really focusing on with the girls that I work with who are in their 40s and above. And it's a much more complex type of inflammation. And it's this chronic, low grade, sometimes called systemic inflammation, and it's a long-term low activation of the immune system. So it's almost like you don't even notice an onset of it. It's really slow. It can last for weeks or months or years. But the problem with it is it's linked to most chronic diseases. So having chronic or low-grade systemic inflammation doesn't mean you're going to develop chronic diseases, but most chronic diseases like type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, autoimmune disease, cancer, obesity, they all have a link back to inflammation or this chronic type of inflammation. So we wonder, for best health and for weight loss, we really want to focus on reducing inflammation so that we can reduce our incidence of developing these chronic diseases and weight loss. And I'm sure we'll get into it in a minute, but it really throws havoc in your body when you're going through perimenopause and menopause as well, if there's levels of inflammation there.
Yeah, well, I would love to dive into that. And you kind of touched on this, but why is it that we focus, or why is it that you want us to focus on reducing inflammation rather than dieting to lose the weight? How does that all work?
Yes, so I don't think diets work. In fact, I really believe they don't work because diets are restrictive and it really messes up your metabolism. So metabolism is all controlled by our thyroid gland. And so if we start dieting, we in fact, let me just back up even a tiny bit more. I always talk about this triangle of the endocrine system, which is our hormone system with my clients. I talk about reproductive hormones out in this corner, thyroid hormones in this corner, and stress hormones in this corner. And so if one aspect of each of these is out of balance, all three of them will come out of balance. And so when we diet, we're really putting a lot of stress on our our stress system. So all the adrenal gland, cortisol, all that kind of stuff. So that real stress kind of hormone, endocrine picture, we're putting a lot of stress on that when we're dieting. And so you can see then that has a kick-on effect to our reproductive system and our endocrine system in the thyroid gland. So then that slows down our metabolism, puts your hormones out of control, everything kind of goes a bit haywire when you're dieting and doing restrictive stuff. So that's counting calories. Keto dieting doesn't work for women. I really think it works quite well for men, but not so well for women. And it just puts too much stress on our nervous system. And then even intermittent fasting, like a lot of ladies who start working with me go, I'm not losing weight. Like when I'm fasting until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm like, well, it's got putting too much stress on your nervous system. And as soon as I get them to just narrow that window of fasting a little bit so they're not doing this long fast, the typical 16-8, it does work quite well on men, but not so well on women, especially over 40. Then they start to lose weight because they're just reducing that stress on their nervous system. So that's one thing about why diets don't work. And so I don't like to focus on diets, but why we like to focus on inflammation is because we can then have an abundance of food that we eat that doesn't throw out our nervous system. And if we can find the foods that we love, of course, you would love the foods that also love you back by actually supporting and nourishing and nurturing your system and not causing some kind of low-grade systemic inflammation, because a lot of foods can, then that's the right answer. Like, you don't have to diet. You can always swap things in and swap things out. So, and then you just have a long-term sustainable approach that becomes your forever life, that you're not missing out on anything. You can still have chocolate sometimes. You can still have a glass of wine sometimes. You can go out for dinners and you know how to look at a menu and work out what's going to work for you and make a best decision. So you're not missing out on anything. Whereas I think if you're dieting, I think it can be quite antisocial. You can miss out on things. You say, I can't go out for dinner. I can't do this. I'm on a diet. So all that stuff really doesn't work for, I don't know, whole life health. We have to have a beautiful social life as well. So we don't want to miss out on that stuff.
I love I love that you touched on finding the foods that you love and love you back. So correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're alluding to here is like maybe dairy works for some people and they feel very good on it, eating it, and other people, it just doesn't love their body back. Is that what you're saying here?
100%. And I can't sit here and tell you, Leah, what is the right approach for you. I can't tell any of the ladies listening what's the right approach for them, but I know how to help people work it out for themselves. And that's why one diet doesn't work for everybody. And if there was one diet that worked for everybody, there would only be one diet. But it's why we have to learn to listen to our bodies, understand, get signals and messages from our body to know if a particular food loves us stop or not.
You have to almost be a detective for a short period of time until you figure it out. And it's helpful.
Yeah, 100%.
Someone helping you on that journey. Otherwise, it's overwhelming.
Yeah. It's too confusing. It's too confusing. There's so much confusing and conflicting information out on the internet. If people were Googling and trying to figure it out for themselves, it just wouldn't work. And so I run a week program. Yeah, too much. And I run a 12-week program, and with the ladies that I work with in that program, we go through an elimination and a reintroduction. And so when we eliminate, we take out the most common pro-inflammatory foods so we can really reduce their diet down to this beautiful low inflammatory for only 3 weeks. Like, so it's not even a diet. There's still lots of foods that they eat, but we have to reduce all those foods right down to the low inflammation. Then we add everything back in one at a time. And that's when you actually lose. So you've got to do this detective work, and you start to really then lose weight because you're doing the lower inflammation. But you can't stay in that kind of detox phase forever because it's not sustainable. So adding the foods back in. And I find most ladies will find one or two food groups that aren't right, or just one or two foods that sometimes are like healthy on paper that you wouldn't necessarily think could be something that you need to take out of your diet because it's causing inflammation.
Well, let's I want to further the discussion on inflammation, especially because all the women watching with me, I would suspect, are in this, they're either about to enter perimenopause, they're in it, or they're in, postmenopause. So what happens during this period of time in the perimenopause state if we already have systemic inflammation? What's going on?
So in the perimenopause stage, our hormones start to have like this crazy fluctuation. So estrogen starts to have these wild fluctuations, progesterone starts to slowly drop. And these wild fluctuations in estrogen can cause all sorts of symptoms, plus the progesterone dropping can cause all sorts of symptoms. But if there is a low-grade systemic inflammation, all of those symptoms are worsened and heightened. So you can get bigger differences and changes in that estrogen and progesterone. And night sweat.
Already suffering through perimenopause, and inflammation is making it even worse.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. And it was interesting. Like I've got a sensitive little body. Like I've been through some health stuff myself in my 30s, and so I know for me that gluten and dairy are not my friend, and they cause inflammation in my body. But when I was running my clinic, it was very stressful at times. I had upwards of 30 staff at one point. And I remember on a Friday, I finished at work on a lunchtime on a Friday. And where my clinic was, it was right around the corner from this really good factory outlet for a chocolate shop. And so I always go there on a Friday afternoon, and I'd get two things of chocolate. I had the factory outlet broken pieces for half price. And I think that'll last me for like, the week. And I'd go home, and I was just in such a cortisol state and so stressed that I would eat both boxes of chocolate on a Friday afternoon. And I started getting night sweats, and I was like, I've never had perimenopause symptoms before. And then I started running my nutrition programs about 2.5 years ago. And when I had the first group, I was like, I can't be eating chocolate on a Friday afternoon. Like, I'm telling all these beautiful women to look after themselves and eat beautiful food. I'm like, I've got to start eating this. And it was fascinating because as soon as I stopped eating the chocolate, my night sweats went away. And I'm now 47 and I have zero perimenopause symptoms, like just none. And so all the ladies I work with come to me crazy perimenopause symptoms, night sweats, brain fog, anxiety, it is a still picture of like needing coffee to get you going in the morning, needing a sugar mid-afternoon hit just to keep you going, and needing wine to help you wind down at night. Like, it's just so common, that little picture. And when they start reducing inflammation in their systems, all of that goes away. All of it. There's a few other things we have to tweak as well. Like, it's not always just that. Sometimes there's
lost our audience when you said we have to cut out chocolate and wine, but
you don't. You don't. You may not have to. I had to, but you may not have to, and they may not have to. And if you need to cut it out for just a tiny bit of time, 3 weeks, not long, anyone can do that for 3 weeks. And then when you add them back in, you can figure out, I'll try. And even wine, right? So wine is so interesting because in Australia, there's different laws around how many chemicals they can use to make a lot of wine versus in Europe, there's different laws. So in Europe, I think it's a maximum of 30 chemicals that they can expose the whole winemaking process to. And in Australia, there's no limit. And so I can have a glass of European wine and feel absolutely fine. I have half a glass of Australian wine and I feel like I've drunken 3 and I have a hangover the next day. And then I have an inflammatory reaction. I feel inflammation, chronic inflammation gives like fluid retention kind of feeling as well. So I feel my rings get tight. That's always a giveaway for me if there's been an inflammatory reaction. So yeah, wine isn't always off the cards. It's just figuring out little things like that. Can you have European wine? Maybe not Australian wine, depending on
not American wine.
I don't know how many chemicals they use in American wine.
Use a lot.
Oh, it's interesting, isn't it?
Well, I mean, you've already kind of touched on like what an anti-inflammatory diet and lifestyle look like, but I want to kind of touch on anything else we talked about. And I really like what you said about the 3 weeks of kind of cutting many of the things out that could potentially be problematic. It's almost like a recalibration, right? Like setting a baseline. And then like, okay, I can handle dairy, can't handle gluten, wine makes me feel this way. Like you're getting in touch with your body again, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So
This
is there
is
other aspects of this diet and lifestyle for an anti-inflammation that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting. So I've had my class to cut out the main most common pro-inflammatory food groups that are 3 weeks, which is gluten, cow's food, processed sugars, and alcohol. And then when we reintroduce, we get those messages back from our body. There's some other elements too, which I'll talk about in a second, but there is a few tricky things that sometimes the messages can get a bit muddled up. And so that is if you have any gut issues, that can kind of change things around. So we need to get on top of gut issues underlying as well. If you've been through a really stressful period, so I had a couple of clients that have like lost their elderly parents while I've been working with them, and you just see it kind of just changes everything for a little while until that nervous system settles down to get over a really big period of stress or grief. If there's any hormonal changes, like if there's premenstrual or someone's just had a hysterectomy, like that can kind of throw things around a little bit. Um, and oh gosh, there's another one I can't think off the top of my head. This is the only perimenopause symptom I sometimes get. I get a tiny bit of like brain fog, not brain fog, but just that empty memory that comes back later on. So if I remember, I'll tell you. But there's a few little things that sometimes we have to navigate through that isn't just straight like this food works for me and this food doesn't. Sometimes you think, well, that should have worked for, hasn't worked before. And like, why? So then we talk about what some of those other factors may be. But the other things you need to look about to really focus on an anti-inflammatory diet and lifestyle is reducing exposure to chemicals and preservatives and additives and chemicals in your environment and in your food. So I always love the term low tox living. So looking at your beauty products and making sure they're chemical free, and looking at your house cleaning products and making sure they're chemical free, making sure you don't put hot food in plastic and then put it into the fridge, because we want to be using more like glass containers, and even avoiding non-stick pans and having ceramic or stainless steel pans for your cooking. So there's so many different things that we can do to focus on that low tox living that also helps. So I have to reduce kind of all of that chemical kind of load on our body as well. And then when we look at foods, week one, when I work with my clients, we start to talk about eating only real foods, like avoiding fake foods. And the way you can do that is go to the supermarket, turn the back of the packet over, whatever you're looking at, read the back of the packet. In Australia, it's different for you guys in the States because we have numbers on the back of our packet. So if there's a chemical, it gets written as a number. So I can say to my clients, turn it over, make sure there's no numbers. If there's no numbers, it's okay. Now, to my US clients, it's a little bit more tricky, but we have to turn the back of the packet over, and you have to look and see if there's any words that look like chemical kind of words, because they're written out as they actually are written out. And if you can't actually understand the ingredients and something in there you don't really understand, I'd put it back on the shelf and then get another version. Like, for example, a tin of tomatoes. You can get a tin of tomatoes that's got additives, preservatives, citric acid, and tomatoes and salt and water. Or you can get another one that just has tomatoes, salt, and water. So you can really easily see, I'm going to have this one, but I'm going to put that one back. So,
because I also tell my clients, if you can't pronounce it, or if your grandmother wouldn't recognize it, it's not a real food.
Yeah, exactly. But it is hard, I think, as in the US, because they complicate it a little bit by putting hidden sugars in with certain names, and whereas in Australia it's a little bit easier because it's the number system. But it's just about learning and practicing and having someone like a coach that you can reach out to and say, take a photo of the packet and say, what's this? Is this okay or is this not okay?
Yeah, and sometimes we have these little questions that come up in our day, like looking at a package or looking at the back of our personal care products or makeup, these seem like little things, but when you add up each interaction, each instance, all of those potential toxins in our life, they add up. And so
Big time.
it's impossible to eliminate all of the toxins we're exposed to. But even if you, like what you're suggesting, if people just start taking small steps day to day, it can really add up.
Yeah. And our bodies are clever. Like our bodies are designed to be able to cope with a level of toxin load and toxic load. But the problem in our modern industrialized lifestyle is there's just too many toxins we're exposed to in our food, in our environment, in the air we're breathing. And so if we can focus on reducing what we can control, then our body can, it's clever. Our bodies are very clever and it can deal with what we can't control if it's in a less amount because we're taking out the things we can control with plastics and chemicals and additives and preservatives.
Absolutely. Well, this whole process can sometimes seem overwhelming to someone that's maybe just starting out. So I would love to hear from you. What are some quick tips on just getting started? Where do we start?
Pretty much what we
Anti-inflammatory lifestyle, I should say.
that pretty much is what we were talking about. Like I would one of the first steps would be to, next time you go to the supermarket, read the packets. That's number one. Put anything back that looks like a chemical. It might take a little bit longer the first time, but you'll start to learn the brands that work. Next step would be to change over any of your plastic containers that you have in your house and put in glass. They're becoming more available these days and a lot cheaper. So you can just chip away at that, changing them over. And definitely not putting hot food into plastic containers. So even if you haven't had a chance yet to change them over, let the food cool before you put it in plastic. And then and looking at your beauty products, cleaning products, going for organic and just changing those over slowly. Each time you need to buy something, go for an alternative. And then when it comes to nutrition, it's a bigger piece, like it really is, because I don't like to tell people to cut out whole food groups, like to say, blanket approach, cut out gluten, dairy, sugar, alcohol, because it's not sustainable for the long run. But when you can get that nutrition piece where you can do an elimination and then reintroduce with the support of somebody to help you, because it is complicated and it's different for all of us, that would be the next thing after you do those little first changes that you can control easily.
Yeah, I like to correlate it kind of like if you've ever moved homes and you pack up everything in boxes, you vacate one house. And then many people do this as you're moving into your new home, you unpack stuff and you realize like, I don't love this anymore. Or I don't need this, or this is taking up unwanted space. You're like, I'm just going to get rid of this. And that's kind of what an elimination diet does for you.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's almost like not like I don't love this, we need to get rid of it. It's almost like we need to do a blanket low inflammation approach first of all, so that it gives you the level of inflammation comes down, so that when you have something that causes an inflammation response, you can actually see that and feel that in your body. So yeah, it's getting rid of the common inflammatory foods, having a really low inflammation diet for a couple of weeks, and then reintroducing.
So I would love to hear, do you have a favorite client story where they did this, they experienced, they went through the process of reducing inflammation and experienced big changes?
I have so many. But yeah.
I wish we had a couple hours, but maybe just like
Yeah.
one to paint a picture of what women could maybe see themselves going through that journey.
Yeah. And I think about this gorgeous client, Kate. So was it last year or the year before that she started working with me? And Kate's in she's like late 40s or early 50s at that stage. And she's a really busy businesswoman. She's got elderly parents, teenage kids, like all of that common stuff that us girls in this age group have. And I remember she was just totally stressed to the eyeballs. Like she was working overtime. Parents are taking up a lot of her time. She really needed to care for them and look after them at night. And she told me she was drinking wine every night of the week with her husband just to wind down from all the stress. And I remember her being really like, I don't even know if I can do your program. Like her energy was really like, these things I just don't have enough time. I don't know, I'm going to fit it all in. Like her energy was really like, because she was just so in that adrenal cortisol kind of stress. Anyway, she knew she needed to get healthy and something had to change, but she had kind of had really low motivation to do anything because she just didn't know how she could deal with that on top of the overwhelm of everything else she had going on around her. And she kind of didn't know that she could get in the right headspace. It was pretty much like I didn't know how to fit it all in for her. So she had the typical perimenopause stuff. She was one of those clients I was telling you about. Coffee in the morning, sugar, she'd have a chocolate bar mid-afternoon just to keep going and get through work. And then she would have to have that alcohol at night to wind down. And she also said, I don't know if I want to give the alcohol up. It's a really nice social thing with my husband. Like it's a time when we sit down and we have a glass of wine together and we chat about the day. And but she had terrible night sweats. She didn't have a huge amount of weight to lose, but she said she was putting on a little bit of extra weight around her belly, and she'd never had any weight issues before, but she could feel her pants getting a bit tighter. Terrible brain fog. Like she said she would forget everything at work and just felt like she had to write to-do list for everything because she couldn't remember anything. And then the anxiety was terrible for her as well. So one of the first things we did was with her, like there's some amazing non-alcoholic wine that you can get now that is actually quite healthy. And some non-alcoholic wine is not healthy because it's got all the additives and preservatives, but you can actually find some beautiful alternatives to alcoholic wine. You can still have that beautiful ritual, having a glass of wine, your partner or whatever you want to do, but not have all the nasties and reduce alcohol at the same time. And so that was one of the first things she did was switch over so she could still have that evening ritual with her husband. And by week 5, that was sort of in the middle of our detox phase, she was like a completely different person. So instead of staying at work until 8 o'clock at night, she was doing often, she would be leaving at 5. And she told me she was taking her employees on a walk at lunchtime. I just said, all right, everyone, we're leaving the desks. We're all going on a walk. So they'd all go on a walk and get away from the desk. Like it was just, she said all their productivity got better. She made everyone leave at 5 o'clock. No one was allowed to stay late, but their whole productivity of the whole team improved. And she had no sugar after dinner because she was also a chocolate and wine person. So no wine, no sugar after dinner. And she was eating much more protein at the right amount of times of the day because protein's really important, but it's also important to have it at the right times. And so then because she was having enough protein, she didn't have to rely on willpower to say no to the sugar and the alcohol. She just didn't feel like it because she just didn't have any cravings left. The tummy fat was disappearing, but we had these weekly coaching calls and her energy was just delightful. Like this kind of energy was gone and she was just like, she was vibrant and thriving and positive and happy, and she just couldn't believe that she'd felt like she was feeling this amazing. So I remember her telling me at the end of the program, she said, I don't know, that detox was just what I needed, and now I understand my body and now I know what I need, and I'm never going back to my old ways again. That's what she told me.
Wow. That's a very inspiring story. And I think many of us can identify with your client, Kate's like not wanting to give up the chocolate or the wine and kind of being stuck in this like survival mode. Like I can't change anything, but like hearing this story paints a picture of like if you can get through it, that's what's waiting for you on the other side, this beautiful way of living that you're going to feel amazing and back in touch with your body and not dependent on the caffeine, the alcohol, the sugar to get you into a mood that you think you need to be in.
And it doesn't take long. Like literally, my clients do a 3-week elimination. Do a few things before that, but 3-week elimination, which they all find actually really easy because they start them so good. And then the reintroduction takes about 4 weeks. So it's really like 7-week process to start feeling really good, but even less than that because my clients start feeling amazing week 5. Like there's this real pattern. Week 5 is the magic week that they just start feeling so good. And so you think about 5 weeks goes to this the whole life. Like it's not long in the grand scheme of things.
It's worth it, especially if we want to be thriving through our 80s, 90s, and possibly beyond. So,
Yes.
Wow. Andrea, you've dropped so much helpful information into our laps. I do want to share with the audience that you're giving them a free gift today. It's a total body tone up in under 3 weeks. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so it's all my things I'm very passionate about, which is mindset, movement, and nutrition. And so I'm an ex-professional dancer, and so I love bar workouts. And so I've got some beautiful bar works included in there, and they're suitable for any age because we can modify and change, and also I'm injuries, so I've got lots of modifications for different people in there. And then there's 7 beautiful tips on reducing inflammation and little things that you can implement into your lifestyle. Plus, we have a bit of a healthy habit tracker. So we're reducing inflammation and we're implementing some tiny little healthy habits that are very easy to do, but also very easy not to do. But if you choose to do them, they're very easy. They take only a minute or half a minute to implement, but they can have a really hugely positive and a cumulative impact in your life if you can just make some tiny changes. So it's a PDF and a video series, little freebie that's got lots of amazing information and a workbook and all sorts of things in there for you.
Wow, that's incredibly generous. So if you're watching this right now, go back to the email that brought you to this interview and you'll have a link there that you can click on and connect with Andrea and get your free gift. So go, make sure you go and do that, because I'm going to do that too. I love bar, and I love that you offer a way to track habits, because if you're not setting goals and tracking, it's probably not happening.
Exactly. We have to measure up to success, don't we?
Yes. Thank you so much, Andrea. Anything else that we didn't touch on that you want to cover briefly, or?
No, but just, every woman that's listening, you're worth it. Your health and your long-term health deserves your priority, and we only get one lifetime. And so I don't know about you, but I want my lifetime to be as long and healthy as possible, not stuck in a nursing home when I'm older. And so the time that we need to make those changes is now. Like, it really is. In our 40s is a time when our bodies, if we don't look after them, can gather autoimmune diseases. And once you have an autoimmune disease, it's very hard. Well, it is impossible to get rid of an autoimmune and it's disease, and it's very hard to get on top of those symptoms. So if nothing else, like even if you already have one autoimmune disease, this is a time you don't want to gather others. So really looking after your body. And if you don't have any autoimmune diseases, the 40s is when they can tuck in. And so reducing inflammation and getting to your best health, it's a really key time because of these hormonal changes and fluctuations that are going on. So it is important, and you are important, and your health is a priority.
I completely agree. And also, women in their 40s, we've probably devoted most of our, like, if you have children, we've devoted most of our life to adult life, to raising these children, nourishing them. Now our time, so we can be there to enjoy our children, our grandchildren, our lives. And I know that what we touched on today, in essence, seems very basic, but it's so important. And I love that you highlighted that there is a path here for everyone to achieve the vibrance and the vitality that they want to. They just need to put in a little work and they'll get there. It's totally doable. So thank you
100%
for highlighting that and to share that information.
My pleasure.
All right. Bye, everyone.